Hey everyone, it's Michaela. I am going to be presenting on my topic for the content analysis paper and presentation, which I'm doing now. Um, I decided to focus on Hurricane Maria, so that was my disaster. Um, and then I'll be looking at the displacement, which I'll get into a little deeper in a little bit. But on this first slide here, you can see a picture of Puerto Rico while Hurricane Maria was going over the island and the surrounding areas last September. Hurricane Maria had made landfall in Puerto Rico on September 20th, 2017. So it was just over a year ago that this event had occurred, and that um, that Hurricane Maria had hit Puerto Rico just a week or two after Irma had hit the island. So it was already um, hurricane season, and other hurricanes were going through when Maria, the biggest one of them all, came along. So I'm going to be focusing on Hurricane Maria and how it affected Puerto Rico in regards to population displacement as well as mass migration to the mainland United States. So we're going to be looking at some of the background of Puerto Rico leading up to the hurricane, and then the effects after the hurricane, and then some thoughts on where this will take Puerto Rico in the future. So for my key resources and findings, um, my first article was a, a journal article. So it was titled Maria and Puerto Rico, Natural Disaster in a Colonial Archipelago. That was from 2018. Um, this article focused on some of the background of Puerto Rico, how Puerto Rico is a organized but unincorporated territory of the United States. That's been Puerto Rico's status since 1898, so it's been quite a while that it's been unincorporated and kind of unstable in its status. And nearly half of adults in America do not know Puerto Rico or Puerto Ricans are United States citizens. So I think that too contributed to the response our country had in sending aid to the island after the hurricane, and just the response of the general public in that. It's important to note that Puerto Rico, as a territory of the United States, does contribute to the annual appropriation of funding to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. And Puerto Rico also relies on this FEMA support in emergencies. So it contributes to the organization. It relies on the organization in emergencies, like a hurricane, like Maria. Um, and then another thing that the article talked about was how the destruction of Maria revealed the colonial laws that are in place with Puerto Rico that limit the scope of actions that Puerto Rico can take in response to emergencies. And just one example of one of these is Promesa, which was imposed on Puerto Rico in 2016, just 1 year before the hurricane hit. And it was used as a way to deal with the economic crisis Puerto Rico was facing, but it restricted the Puerto Rican government's disaster response that they had after Maria, because it restricted the amount of resources Puerto Rico could mobilize locally. So that was just one law that had an impact on the community and their ability to respond immediately after the disaster. The second article on this page is titled Estimates of Post-Hurricane Maria Exodus from Puerto Rico. This one was published in October of 2017. It's important to note that that was 1 month after the hurricane, and these were estimates that were made trying to predict the amount of residents that would be leaving Puerto Rico and moving to the mainland United States after the hurricane. And their estimate was that between 114,000 to 213,000 residents would be leaving Puerto Rico annually following the hurricane, which came out to be pretty close to what actually happened, as we can see in the next article, which was titled Quick Facts, Hurricane Maria's Effect on Puerto Rico. This one was a news article that I had gotten. So it identified that over 135,000 Puerto Ricans have migrated from the island to the mainland since the hurricane happened. And that article was published in January of 2018. So we can see how much of an effect that the hurricane had on migration following the hurricane. All right, on the next slide here, we have a chart which was from the second article on this slide here, the estimates that was published in October, the month after the hurricane. And this chart just kind of breaks down their predictions and estimates as to how the breakdown of the migration would be by state. And so, as you can see, Florida was the first state. They predicted that the most Puerto Ricans would be moving to Florida, and then we can see that Pennsylvania came in second for their predictions, and then Texas, and so on, which I found fascinating, that Pennsylvania would be up there too. This is a quote from the Schwartz article, which is important to recognize what this author was saying in response to the living conditions in Puerto Rico following the hurricane. So the quote states, "Although power has been restored and access to clean water has greatly improved, Puerto Ricans are still recovering from the destruction and trauma of the hurricane. Day-long power outages are still common, especially in rural areas. Some homes still have tarps instead of roofs. Collapsed utility poles and uprooted trees are common. The continued challenges have driven hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans from the island entirely." This was again published in January of 2018. So that was months and months after the hurricane happened. All right, the next slide here focuses on some of my other resources. The first article is titled, "Exodus from Puerto Rico Grows as Island Struggles to Rebound from Hurricane Maria." This article was looking at, it was another news article, and it was looking at the accounts of different specific members of the Puerto Rican community and their personal situations with moving off of the island and hoping to come back, but it discussed the overall community as well. So the article talked about how many of the Puerto Ricans who were leaving the island had full intentions of returning, but with the passing of time and how the island just never got back to where it was before, in order for them to go back and live there, they kept just having to stay in the United States, in the mainland. So the author made sure to point that out, that Puerto Ricans didn't want to be leaving, but they couldn't go back because living conditions were not safe or stable. Again, extended power outages, there were communication lapses, infrastructure failures, and sometimes even isolation, where communities were just completely cut off from the rest of the island. So in when this article was written in March of 2018, they said that 2 of every 5 individuals in Puerto Rico who applied received money from FEMA for home repairs. So only 2 out of 5 who applied actually received financial assistance from FEMA. The author also talked about how the reason people are leaving is because there's no jobs and no stability on the island for them, or there were not at that point when the article was written. So they were moving in order to find an income and just a stable living environment. The article also talked about school enrollments. So especially in Florida, there were higher numbers of Puerto Rican children being enrolled in schools. There were 22,000 students from the island that had been enrolled in schools in the States since the hurricane had happened when this article was written. And half of those, 10,324 children, were enrolled in Florida. So nearly half of the population of children and families who had moved were being enrolled in Florida. The article also discussed general background about how the economy in Puerto Rico was bad before the hurricane hit, and nearly half the island lives in poverty. The average household income is less than $18,000 per year, and especially now following the hurricane with the economy, the population is even less productive. So, in order to give back to the Puerto Rican government, they're going to be struggling. That's an even more serious problem because the economy is not going to bounce back, especially since people are leaving. All right, this last article is called After Harvey, Irma, and Maria, an opportunity for better health, rebuilding our communities as we want them. So, this article focused on how the communities hit by the hurricanes during the hurricane season last year can kind of bounce back and start moving forward again. The article acknowledged that there is no silver lining to what happened in Puerto Rico with Hurricane Maria, but they also said this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to rebuild the affected communities, to be safer and healthier, and be better prepared for future events and emergencies that may happen, things like future hurricanes. So this is an opportunity to rebuild and prepare for those future incidents that will happen. The article also said it's an opportunity to remind all communities, not just Puerto Rico, remind all communities of the importance of pre-planning for disasters, and not necessarily just hurricanes either. Like, it could be any type of disaster that you might not be expecting. How important it is, and of course we've talked about this in our class, how important it is to be prepared for those, because pre-planning is much better than trying to fix the destruction after it has happened. So resiliency is important in order to build healthier communities. For me personally, my next steps with this project, I'd like to continue researching and finding reliable sources that talk about the displacement and migration from Puerto Rico following Hurricane Maria. I would like to try and find more journal articles that are focused on migration following Hurricane Maria. Just because it's so recent, there's not a lot out there, but I'd like to look a little more and see if I can find anything else. And then I'm going to be working on writing my outline for the paper and then actually beginning the paper. For me, with where I need help, I don't have many questions. My main thing would be, like, how long should the paper be? Because I'm not sure specifically if there's a requirement for that, but or if it's just making sure we cover the content. But that's my only question as of now. These are my references. I'll just move this so that you can see. Oops. See the resources. Oh, okay. That works. Anyway, so just to recap, my paper is looking at Puerto Rico in regards to Hurricane Maria and the effect that the hurricane had on the island, with displacement of the Puerto Rican community, and then following that, mass migration to the mainland United States. And it's important, I think, to look at the status of the island before the hurricane even hit, and then events during the hurricane, following immediately afterwards, and then long term, as well as looking to see how the community can move forward and improve for future potential disasters. All right, thank you for listening, and good luck to everyone else for your projects as well.